Ever wondered why, no matter how much you try to distract yourself, that one person just won't leave your thoughts? It's like they've set up camp inside your head, living there, rent-free, showing up in your dreams, in random songs, in the middle of your workday. You tell yourself to move on, but the harder you try, the more their face, their voice, their memory sneaks back in. What if it isn't just coincidence? What if there's an actual reason, hidden in the way your mind, your heart, and maybe even your soul are wired, that explains why you can't stop thinking about them? And what if understanding that reason is the first step to finally breaking free? The human mind has a way of holding on to people long after they're gone from our lives. It's almost unsettling how someone can take up space in your thoughts, even when you haven't seen them in months or years. You could be eating breakfast, scrolling through your phone, or walking down the street, and suddenly their image surfaces like a ripple in water. That's because the mind doesn't operate in straight lines. It moves in loops, replaying moments and faces the way a scratched record keeps returning to the same spot. You think you're done. You think you've turned the page, but the brain has a different plan. This loop effect can feel frustrating, but it isn't random. When you experience something powerful with someone, whether love, heartbreak, or even deep conflict, your brain tags that memory as important. It's almost like a survival mechanism. The mind says, "Don't forget this. You might need it later." And so it holds on to the person, weaving them into the background of your everyday life. That's why you can be in the middle of something completely unrelated and suddenly be pulled back into memories of them. It doesn't stop there. The more you try not to think about them, the stronger the grip becomes. This is what psychologists call ironic processing. When you tell yourself, "Don't think about this," your mind latches onto it even tighter. It's like trying not to picture a pink elephant. The thought becomes impossible to shake. So when you tell yourself to stop thinking about a person, your brain ends up reinforcing the exact thought you're trying to avoid. This is why it can feel like you're trapped in your own head, stuck replaying the same scenes over and over. The person becomes a kind of mental landmark, and no matter where your thoughts wander, you somehow circle back to them. It feels less like a choice and more like a compulsion, as though your mind is pulling you back towards something unfinished, something that demands attention. And this is just the beginning of understanding why they won't let go of your thoughts. Your brain is not just a container of thoughts, it's an intricate machine designed to store, sort, and retrieve memories. When it comes to people, the brain doesn't treat them all equally. Some slip into the background like old files you never open, while others remain highlighted, bookmarked, ready to pop up at any moment. The reason for that is rooted in how memory works. When you experience someone who stirs deep emotions, whether joy, love, or heartbreak, the hippocampus, the part of the brain responsible for forming memories, locks it in more firmly. But it's not just storage. The amygdala, which deals with emotions, attaches a kind of priority label to the memory. This means when your mind is scanning for what matters most, that person gets pulled out of the archive again and again. It's not an accident. It's wiring. Dopamine plays a huge role here too. This chemical acts like your brain's reward system. When you think about a person who made you feel excited, alive, or deeply connected, dopamine reinforces the experience, making your brain crave that memory the way it craves sugar or caffeine. Even if the relationship or interaction was complicated, your brain still remembers the rush. It keeps returning to it like a gambler returning to the slot machine, hoping for the same high. That's why certain faces, voices, or even small details about someone can be impossible to shake. The brain has bookmarked them, marked them as special, and it doesn't let go easily. It's almost like carrying around a photo album that you never asked for, one that keeps opening itself without warning. And every time you revisit those mental snapshots, you strengthen the memory further, carving it deeper into your mind. So when you find yourself thinking, "Why can't I stop replaying this person in my head?" The truth is simple. Your brain isn't malfunctioning. It's doing exactly what it was designed to do: prioritize what it believes is important for your survival, your learning, or your emotional story. And once that person is written into your story, the brain makes sure you don't forget them. If memories are the files your brain keeps, then emotions are the glue that decides which ones stick. You don't remember every detail of a random Tuesday, but you remember the first time someone made your heart race, or the day they walked away, because emotions burn those moments into you. Neutral experiences fade quickly, but the ones tied to strong feelings get replayed like your mind's favorite movie clips. That's why you can't stop thinking about someone who stirred deep emotions in you. The brain doesn't just store their face, it stores the way they made you feel. It remembers the warmth of their laugh, the sting of their rejection, the thrill of their presence. Emotions intensify the signal, turning ordinary interactions into unforgettable imprints. The more powerful the feeling, the more permanent the mark. Think about heartbreak. It's not just sadness. It's a flood of chemicals, a storm inside your body. The pain feels physical because your nervous system processes it as real stress. That's why longing can feel like a weight in your chest or an ache in your stomach. Your brain, wired to learn from strong emotional events, treats this as crucial data. Instead of letting go, it says, "Don't forget. Pay attention. This matters." The same is true for desire and longing. That rush of excitement when you're near someone, or even just thinking about them, wires the brain to crave more. It's similar to how addictive behaviors form. The emotional high makes the brain return to the memory, even when it's painful. That's why sometimes you hate that you're still thinking about them, yet a part of you clings to the thoughts anyway. This is what makes breaking free so difficult. It's not just the person you're remembering, it's the emotions attached to them replaying on a loop. Until those feelings lose their intensity, the memories keep resurfacing. And the irony is, every time you indulge the thought, you strengthen the emotion again, making the cycle even harder to escape. Why do some people seem to move on quickly while others stay stuck thinking about the same person for years? A big part of the answer lies in something called attachment. From the moment we're born, we form bonds with the people who care for us. These early experiences shape how we connect, love, and even let go later in life. Psychologists call this attachment theory, and it explains a lot about why some thoughts refuse to leave. If you grew up with secure attachment, where love felt safe and consistent, you may find it easier to move forward when a relationship ends. Your brain learned that people come and go, but you'll be okay. On the other hand, if love felt unpredictable, distant, or overwhelming in your early years, your brain learned to hold on tightly. It wired itself to chase, to cling, to not let go easily. And when someone important walks into your life, those old patterns flare up again. You don't just miss them, you feel a deep fear of losing the connection, even if it's already gone. This is why you might find yourself replaying conversations, analyzing what you could have done differently, or imagining future scenarios with them, even though reality has moved on. Your brain is trying to protect you the way it learned long ago, by holding on at all costs. It doesn't mean you're weak or broken. It means your mind is following the blueprint it was given. Attachment can also explain why some people become almost an obsession in your thoughts. When the brain senses abandonment, it floods with stress hormones like cortisol, which only intensify the fixation. That's why thinking about them feels less like a choice and more like a reflex. It's your attachment system sounding the alarm, saying, "Don't let this bond slip away." Understanding this doesn't instantly stop the thoughts, but it can make you kinder to yourself. You're not crazy for replaying memories or struggling to let go. You're human, carrying the echoes of how you first learned to love and be loved. And until those old patterns are faced, your mind will keep pulling you back to the people who trigger them. There's a fine line between love and obsession, and it's not always easy to see when you've crossed it. At first, thinking about someone constantly can feel romantic. You tell yourself it's because they're special, because what you felt with them was rare. Love, after all, is supposed to take up space in your heart and your mind. But when those thoughts turn into something you can't control, when they start to dominate your days and keep you awake at night, it shifts into something else entirely. Love is a bond, a connection that allows room for freedom and growth. Obsession, on the other hand, is a trap. Instead of enjoying the thought of someone, you feel consumed by it. Instead of cherishing their presence, you crave it in a way that leaves you restless without it. The difference shows up in how you feel. With love, you feel peace, joy, and even acceptance of distance. With obsession, you feel anxious, unsettled, and unable to imagine life without them. It's like the difference between holding a bird in your hand and trying to cage it. Love lets the bird breathe, trusting it to return if it chooses. Obsession grips tightly, afraid of losing it, squeezing harder until all that's left is desperation. When your mind is stuck on someone, you need to ask yourself, am I remembering them because they brought real meaning into my life? Or am I chasing the thought of them because I can't bear the emptiness without it? This doesn't mean obsession makes you a bad person. It makes you human. Your brain can confuse the chemical rush of love with the addictive pull of obsession. That's why it can feel so overwhelming. But recognizing the difference is crucial. When it's love, you can move forward with gratitude for what was shared. When it's obsession, the first step to freedom is naming it for what it is. Only then can you begin to loosen the grip those thoughts have on you and start reclaiming your peace of mind. Sometimes the reason you can't stop thinking about someone goes beyond psychology and science. It can feel like something invisible is tying you to them, something that words like memory or emotion don't fully explain. Many people call this a spiritual bond, or in simple terms, a soul tie. It's the idea that when you connect deeply with another person, through love, intimacy, or even conflict, your souls form a link that doesn't just vanish when the relationship ends. That's why you might feel their presence long after they're gone. It's not just a memory. It's as if a part of them has been woven into you. In moments of silence, you hear their voice. In prayer, their name rises uninvited. Even when you try to distract yourself, the bond pulls your attention back. Some describe it as chains, others as invisible threads. Whatever the picture, the feeling is the same. You are not completely free. The Bible speaks about two becoming one flesh. And while that's often seen in the context of marriage, the truth is, any deep connection can leave behind a spiritual imprint. That's why casual encounters aren't always so casual. They can leave lingering echoes in the heart and mind. When those ties are healthy, they create lasting support and love. But when they're broken or toxic, they can trap you in cycles of longing, guilt, or even torment. This is why some people struggle more than others to move on. They're not just fighting memories. They're wrestling with a bond that exists on a deeper level. Breaking free from it isn't as simple as distraction or time. It often requires intentional healing, forgiveness, and prayer. Because if the tie is spiritual, then the solution has to reach the spirit as well. When you can't stop thinking about someone, it may not always be a sign you should go back to them. Sometimes it's a sign you need to be released from them. The invisible bond can be powerful, but recognizing it is the first step toward finding true freedom. Even if you've decided to move on, the world around you doesn't always cooperate. Everyday life is full of reminders that can pull someone back into your mind without warning. A song plays on the radio, and suddenly you're transported to a car ride you shared with them. You catch the smell of a certain perfume or cologne, and it's as if they've walked into the room. You pass by a cafe you once visited together, and instantly the memories flood back. These triggers are everywhere, hidden in plain sight, waiting to reignite the thoughts you've tried so hard to quiet. This happens because your brain links experiences to sensory cues. It doesn't just store the memory of the person, it stores the environment around them. The sights, sounds, and smells all become anchors that can pull you back without notice. That's why even a small, random thing can send you spiraling into thoughts of them. Your mind doesn't distinguish between the present moment and the past. It treats the trigger as if it's happening again. The tricky part is that triggers don't just remind you of the person. They reopen the emotional wound attached to them. It's not just remembering their face, it's reliving the way you felt in that moment. That's why a simple reminder can hit you like a wave, leaving you disoriented and overwhelmed. It's more than just memory. It's emotional time travel. And once the cycle starts, it's easy to spiral. One thought leads to another, and soon you're lost in a chain of memories that feel impossible to stop. What began with a song or a passing scent turns into an entire evening of replaying old conversations or wondering what could have been. That's the power of triggers. They don't ask for permission, and they rarely arrive gently. They remind you that moving on isn't just about making a decision. It's about facing the reality that your world is filled with echoes of the person you're trying to forget. One of the biggest reasons someone lingers in your mind is because the story between you never felt finished. The human brain doesn't like loose ends. It's wired to crave resolution, to tie up every narrative with a clear beginning, middle, and end. When a relationship or connection ends abruptly, or without the closure you hoped for, your thoughts keep circling back, as if they're trying to write the ending that never came. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect, the tendency of the mind to remember incomplete or interrupted tasks better than completed ones. Imagine watching a movie that cuts off 10 minutes before the final scene. Your brain would itch for the ending, running through scenarios to fill the gap. That's exactly what happens when someone exits your life without clarity. You replay conversations, dissect their words, and imagine what might have happened if things had gone differently, all because your mind is searching for the missing piece. This lack of closure can make thoughts of them feel unavoidable. Instead of seeing the story as over, your brain treats it as unfinished business, something that still demands attention. The more uncertain or confusing the ending, the stronger the mental pull becomes. Even negative memories can feel magnetic if they leave unanswered questions. Why did they leave? What did I do wrong? Did they care as much as I did? These questions hang in the air, and your mind doesn't rest until it finds answers, even if those answers never come. That's why people sometimes hold on longer than they should. It's not just longing, it's the discomfort of not knowing. Your brain hates the blank space, so it keeps bringing you back to the same thoughts in an effort to fill it. And until you find your own sense of resolution, those open loops can keep you tethered to the past, making it nearly impossible to fully let go. In the past, moving on from someone meant physical distance could eventually dull their presence in your mind. But today, social media has changed everything. Now, even if someone is no longer in your life, they're still just a click away. You can see what they ate for breakfast, where they went last weekend, or who they were with last night. This constant access acts like fuel on the fire, keeping their image alive in your thoughts long after the relationship has ended. The brain reacts to these online glimpses the same way it does to real-life encounters. Every time you see their face on your screen, even for a second, it reactivates the emotional circuits tied to them. It's like poking a wound that was just beginning to heal. Instead of fading, the memory gets refreshed, making it even harder to stop thinking about them. What makes it worse is the illusion of closeness. You're not actually with them, but your brain interprets their online activity as if they're still part of your world. Social media also encourages comparison, which keeps the obsession alive. You notice who they follow, who comments on their posts, and whether they seem happier without you. Each scroll through their profile feels like a test you never signed up for. And every unanswered question becomes another reason for your mind to spiral. Before you realize it, you've trained yourself to keep checking, to keep reopening the wound, hoping for some kind of answer that never really comes. It's like standing outside a locked door, peeking through the window, convincing yourself you'll feel better if you just take one more look. But each glance only strengthens the cycle. Instead of helping you move on, social media keeps you tethered, offering a steady stream of reminders that ensure they never fully leave your thoughts. In a way, you're not just haunted by memories, you're haunted by updates, and that makes letting go more difficult than ever before. There's a frustrating truth about the mind and heart. They don't always agree. Logically, you might know it's time to move on. You tell yourself it's over, that thinking about this person is only holding you back. Yet your emotions keep dragging you in the opposite direction, pulling you into daydreams, memories, and what-ifs. It feels like being caught in a tug-of-war with yourself, where reason and feeling are locked in a battle you can't escape. This inner conflict has a lot to do with how the brain is built. The rational part, the prefrontal cortex, is good at weighing pros and cons, making decisions, and seeing the bigger picture. It knows that dwelling on someone doesn't change the past. But the emotional part of your brain, the limbic system, doesn't care about logic. It operates on instinct, desire, and emotional memory. When those two systems clash, the emotional side often wins because it's faster and more powerful in the moment. That's why just forget them advice almost never works. When your heart doesn't line up with your head, you feel stuck. You may delete their number one day only to find yourself scrolling through old messages the next. You might convince yourself you're fine, but then something small, a word, a smell, a dream, triggers a wave of feelings that washes away all that progress. It's not weakness, it's biology. The brain is wired to hold on to people who made a big impact, and emotions can override logic when the attachment feels too strong. This is why the cycle feels so exhausting. You know better, but knowing isn't enough. The mind wants closure, the heart wants connection, and the body reacts as if the person is still essential to your survival, until both the rational and emotional parts of you come to terms with letting go. The conflict continues, and that's why moving on feels less like a straight path and more like walking in circles, where every step forward is followed by a pull back into the past. What makes thinking about someone so difficult to escape is that it doesn't just stay in your head, it shows up in your body too. When a person has left a deep mark on you, even a passing thought about them can set off physical reactions. Your heart rate picks up, your stomach tightens, your palms sweat. It feels almost identical to the way your body reacts to stress or danger. That's because your nervous system doesn't fully separate emotional pain from physical pain. To your body, remembering them is not just a thought, it's an experience. Neuroscientists have found that areas of the brain activated during heartbreak overlap with the same regions triggered when you feel actual physical pain. This is why missing someone can literally hurt. It's why longing can feel like pressure on your chest or a pit in your stomach. Your body is keeping score, replaying the emotional injury every time the memory returns. And just like a physical wound, the more it's aggravated, the longer it takes to heal. Stress hormones like cortisol play their part too. When you're caught in cycles of rumination about someone, your body can stay in a state of low-level stress. You might feel restless, unable to concentrate, or even physically drained. Over time, this takes a toll, not only on your mood, but on your overall health. The act of constantly thinking about them becomes more than an emotional burden. It becomes a physical one as well. This connection between the mind and body explains why letting go isn't as simple as telling yourself to stop. You're not only working against your thoughts, you're also battling the chemical and physical responses that reinforce those thoughts. It's like your entire system has memorized them, from your brain down to your heartbeat. And until both your mind and body begin to release the grip, the cycle of being pulled back to them continues, making it feel almost impossible to break free. The good news is that even though it feels impossible, there are ways to break free from the cycle. It doesn't happen overnight, and it isn't about forcing yourself to forget. Instead, it's about gently training your mind and body to shift their focus. One of the most powerful tools is mindfulness, the practice of noticing your thoughts without judgment and letting them pass instead of feeding them. When the person pops into your mind, instead of diving into the memory, you acknowledge it like a passing cloud and allow it to drift on. Over time, this weakens the loop that keeps you stuck. Journaling can also help. Writing down your thoughts pulls them out of the endless cycle in your head and gives them a place to land. It helps you see patterns, release emotions, and gain clarity about why the person has such a strong hold on you. What often feels like a tangled knot becomes easier to untie when you lay it out on paper. Another way forward is replacing old habits with new ones. If scrolling through their social media keeps you trapped, replace that habit with something that brings you peace. Reading, walking, or learning a new skill. Your brain is like a trail in the woods. The more you walk one path, the more worn it becomes. By choosing new paths, you slowly create new mental trails, and the old ones begin to fade. Prayer and meditation also bring comfort, especially when the connection feels deeper than logic can explain. Asking God to release you from the bond, to bring peace where there's turmoil, adds a spiritual layer to the healing process. Sometimes the weight of obsession isn't something you can lift on your own. It requires surrendering it to something greater than yourself. Recovery doesn't mean erasing the person from your memory. It means loosening the grip they have on your mind so you can live fully again. The goal isn't to forget, but to remember without pain, to allow the thought of them to pass through without controlling your day. That's when you begin to taste freedom, one small step at a time. When someone occupies your mind day and night, it can feel like a curse. But hidden inside that struggle is an opportunity for growth. Instead of asking only, "Why can't I stop thinking about them?" you can begin asking, What is this teaching me about myself? Pain often points to areas that need healing, and the energy you've been pouring into, replaying their memory, can be redirected into something that builds you up instead of breaking you down. Every obsession begins with a longing for meaning, and that longing can be turned into fuel for personal growth. If you've been stuck in cycles of rumination, try channeling that intensity into something purposeful. Exercise, creative projects, learning new skills, or even serving others can give your mind new anchors to focus on. The more you pour yourself into growth, the less space the past has to dominate your thoughts. It's not about running away from the memories, but about creating a bigger, brighter life that overshadows them. Even faith can reframe the struggle. What if the reason this person still lingers in your thoughts is because their role in your life was meant to wake you up? Maybe they exposed wounds that were already there, wounds that now need your attention. Maybe they showed you what you truly desire, or what you cannot tolerate. In that way, their presence becomes less of a chain and more of a mirror, reflecting the parts of you that are ready to grow. Instead of letting the thoughts eat away at your peace, you can decide to use them as reminders of the kind of future you want to build. If they taught you about love, channel it into how you love others. If they caused pain, let it deepen your empathy for others who hurt. The very energy that once felt like a burden can become a driving force for transformation. When you turn obsession into growth, the person who once felt like your prison becomes the reason you learned how to be free. At the heart of it all, the reason you can't stop thinking about someone is because the human mind isn't wired for randomness. It's wired for meaning. Every connection you make, every person who touches your life in a powerful way, gets assigned a weight by your brain and your heart. That's why they don't just slip away quietly. Your mind keeps them alive because it's searching for meaning in what you experienced. Was it love? Was it loss? Was it a lesson? Until you decide what that meaning is, your thoughts will keep circling back, trying to answer the question. This is the deeper truth. The power doesn't belong to the person you can't stop thinking about. It belongs to you and the story you choose to attach to them. You can frame their presence in your mind as a prison, a constant reminder of what you lost, or you can frame it as a stepping stone, a moment in your life that pushed you toward growth, healing, or clarity. The same memory can be a chain or a key. It depends on how you hold it. For some, the lesson is learning how to let go. For others, it's understanding the difference between love and attachment. And for many, it's realizing that the pain of longing is proof of how deeply capable you are of loving in the first place. You wouldn't be stuck on them if your heart wasn't designed to care so deeply. That capacity isn't a weakness, it's a gift. The challenge is learning how to direct it wisely. When you finally see the situation for what it is, not just an endless cycle of memories, but a signal pointing you towards something greater, you reclaim your power. You may not control the thoughts that pop up, but you do control the meaning they carry. And when you choose meaning that frees you instead of trapping you, the grip begins to loosen. That's when you realize that the real story isn't about why you can't stop thinking about them. It's about what those thoughts are shaping you to become. If this video has spoken to you, don't stop here. Watch the next one on your screen to discover what your mind and heart go through during heartbreak. It might be the exact key you need right now.